Football is back in Happy Valley this weekend. I'm Thomas Frankar, Sean Fitz, Ryan Snyder are with me to talk about all of it. These are the guys if you want to talk to about recruiting, about the game, about who's going to be there, about what's going to be there, about the, hot dogs. You can give us a report on all the new things at Beaver Stadium next week. That's coming up on the show today. Well, other than the hot dogs, I guess. Fitz, how you doing today?
No hot dogs for me, sir. Thank you. But I am well. Ready for a home opener. Haven't had one of those in about a year. So, you only get one. So looking forward to it.
Ryan, this weekend, some interesting things happening, question mark? What are you looking for this weekend?
As far as recruiting goes, I mean, it's pretty much what you would expect for a Bowling Green visitor list, right? A handful of intriguing recruits, but nothing massive. You're not seeing those 30, 40, 50-plus scholarship guys that you sometimes see for bigger Big Ten games. We'll get into some of those guys here a little later in the show. I think for what the weather might be, although it looks like it might be getting a little bit better now, and considering, guys have a lot of high school games and all that going on right now, it's not a bad list. We'll talk about here in a bit.
Yeah, I was surprised, not to spoil the surprise, but some interesting names coming up this weekend. We're going to be getting to that. And of course, because it is football season, this is not just a recruiting show at this point. We're going to be giving you our game predictions, some conversation about what we're looking for this weekend. And of course, Penn State practice was last night, and we haven't had a chance to talk about it yet. So Fitz and I were out there. We will be talking about that in just 1 second. But it's always good to review the week that was. And Ryan, we haven't had your chance to chime in on Penn State's hot start to the recruiting week. Malachi Goodman, Matthew Outten, both commit to the program. So have you learned anything new since then, since those commitments? And have you been able to talk to anybody interesting? And is there anything you want to share about those stories to start the show?
I have not caught up with those guys. They're not big talkers as it is. And when you got high school football going on and obviously classes back in session, we'll get in touch with them then. I'm not going to blow them up when I already kind of have a good feel for why they switched anyway, right? With Matthew Outten, though, I think that's, in some ways, I think that's actually even bigger than Malachi. And I don't know if Sean will agree with that or not, but this was a guy that we talked about for a long time who some and Lash kind of had him as their top guy on the receiver board. Now it depends on who you ask, right? I mean, I think the easy way or the best way to answer that, though, is he's absolutely one of their top 5 or so targets for receivers. So to be able to flip him from Virginia Tech, I think was very important for Penn State, because he was a guy that I know they were kind of bummed out about to not get him the first time around. But versatile playmaker, man, runs has a sub 11 100, so solid speed and just does a little bit of everything, right? And when you're talking about an offense that's run now by Andy Koldenecki, it fits really well. And that's kind of was Charles Power's big takeaway when we caught up with him yesterday about Outten. So big addition there. And then obviously big in a lot of ways, adding Malachi Goodman to the class as well for so many different reasons. We talked about the schools they were going against with Auburn and USC and NIL implications and all that. And sure enough, Penn State gets it over the line, which really important for Troutwine. He already had a really good offensive tackle in Owen Alessini. I think now he has another one that's pretty versatile, right? I mean, I think he's going to be a tackle, but I mean, Malachi could play a couple positions, really. They could bump him inside if they absolutely had to, but really good balance, good base, very strong at the point of the attack. I mean, I think those are the kind of things that stand out about Goodman. And look, he's now the top-ranked player in this class for a reason. If you look across all the sites, everybody's very high on Goodman and his potential. So great addition for Troutwine and Penn State.
Before we get into the next phase of the show, Ryan, there was one other thing that I know happened this week that is kind of a bummer for Penn State fans. So I know there's not any further details, but for anyone that missed it, can you update the fans on Penn State's other offensive tackle commit from August, Kevin Brown?
Yeah, just sounds like he broke his foot. He was out last week against McDevitt. Not good, especially when it happens in practice. Not that practice or game matters, right? But it sounds like he broke his foot last week in practice, and I don't know how long he's going to be out, but a broken foot is not something you want to push, I guess, if that makes sense. Let's see. I assume he's going to probably have to get surgery on it. I don't know all the details right now, and we'll track that down when the time is right. But that's a big loss for Harrisburg. Obviously, they got a big win over McDevitt, winning in overtime. They needed that after the LaSalle game, which was not good. From a Penn State perspective, you really wanted to see Brown take the next step in a lot of ways. And don't get me wrong, I mean, fundamentally and physically and a lot of things there are already very impressive for a junior. But you never want to see any of your commitments, especially juniors, miss out on the junior year because it's such a big year for so many different reasons. We'll see how long he's out, but not good for Kevin Brown. Hope he's able to recover from that strong.
Big one against State College this weekend for Harrisburg. They get State College at home, and State College is a pretty good team this year. Ty Salazar, really good. The receiver for State High. He's got a walk-on offer for Penn State. He's got a couple FCS offers, and he's a guy that I don't know that he comes on the Penn State radar for a scholarship, but man, if he was a walk-on at Penn State, I think he'd play here. So that's definitely one to watch. But you think about Harrisburg's playoff aspirations, after State College, Chambersburg, Cedar Cliff, Carlisle, Altoona, they should be back in position to make the playoffs and then go from there because they finished with Cumberland Valley, CD, and CD East. So
be easy on my Rams. They're 0-2 and they're getting stomped right now. Not good.
Nate last week thought you went to CD East. Boy, did not see that one coming, but he just doesn't pay attention when we talk. So that's him. So Nate was wrong there, you guys, for this segment.
By the way, that was the number one thing that came out of the show this week, Fitz. Everyone loved that.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that at Cumberland Valley last week too. Tyler Merrill's out with an injury at the moment too. Don't have a lot of details. I don't think his is going to be anything like Kevin Brown's as far as keeping him out long term. But yeah, I was sitting around. I was like, let's stop out the Cumberland Valley game, see Tyler Merrill, and then there was Tyler Merrill without any shoulder pads or pads on. So I was like, oh, okay. Should maybe check on that.
I'm going to start doing a segment. This text from Ryan when he gets to games because he went to Iowa and Jackson Smolik ran the ball 30 times, and then. Yes,
no, Jackson Smolik didn't run the ball 30 times. Jackson Smolik handed the ball off 50 times.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So they're always fun. So anyway, what else we got? Well, hey, you got a good question there. Bigger get, Matthew Outten or Malachi Goodman? I mean, that's a close one, right? Like you think about the offensive line class. I think they needed a headliner. Alicini is a guy that we're high on, but I think we're highest on him at On Three. But everyone's pretty high on Malachi Goodman. So it's an interesting class when you think about the dynamic. You got a 6'8", 255-pound, projection at offensive tackle in Alicini. You got a 6'6.5", 245, 250-pound tight end in Brady O'Hara. Now you've got Malachi Goodman, who is very different, 6'5.5", 330 right now. And then you got Michael Troutman, who is probably the best player of them all, like the best player right now.
Fundamentally,
he started a good senior season already, and he's about 6'2.5", 295. So like very body types, but I think you got your headliner there. As compared to the receiver class where you've got Lyric Samuel, you've got now Matthew Outten. Matthew Outten, in your eyes, probably the headliner of that group too. Right?
I think so. I mean, let's see where things progress with a couple of the other guys. I mean, I still love Lyric Samuel. I think Lyric Samuel has the potential to be a really, really good player. But Outten, I think, just from polling sources and things like that, I mean, he seems like the one that they have been really, really high on for a long time, who's kind of gone not under the radar, but maybe just underranked from an On-3 perspective.
Yeah. Did you get any insight in that from Charles in terms of ranking versus the perception from Penn State?
His main thing is just like let's get to the senior film, man, and gotcha. I think that's a big part of it. I mean, I think there's a lot of different things there. I think Charles is big on different data, and we do have some running data, but we don't have all the broad jumps and shuttles and all that kind of stuff. At least Sean, you haven't seen any of that stuff, have you? I mean, we know straight line speed, but that's about it with Outten. Film is good. Go ahead, Sean.
6.49, I believe, is the most reliable time that we have on the 55 meter, which is he can run. And the best part about him, as I said the other day, is like he's able to change gears and control that speed, harness that speed on the field. And not everybody's able to do that. So yeah, I don't know. Him and Kobe Howard are guys that actually profile as early, I don't want to say early contributors, but guys that have a skill set that can transfer to play early if they were needed to.
In different ways too, right? Where one of those guys is an athlete that you just get the ball in his hands, and the other one is a pretty good receiver.
Yeah, he's a pretty good receiver. He's more naturally skilled, but I think that that comparison we made the other day with the Outten and Quentin Martin is an interesting one. It's it's not an apples to apples comparison, but it's a guy with a skill set playing a position that also has a skill set for another position, but you're not going to see too much of that.
Yeah. We're going to get to some of those things and maybe talk a little bit about Quentin Martin today on the show. That's coming up in just a little bit. As always, if you're listening to this show and you want to get more from Blue White Illustrated, you missed the real deal, which was 50% off for a year. But I do always have our deal for you here on the podcast audience, which is growing by the day, and our YouTube audience, which is a rocket ship. Appreciate you guys being here. As always, like the video, subscribe if you're digging this first 10 minutes of recruiting talk. But BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, code PSU1, 2 months for $1. You are now getting the entire Penn State football season and all of the analysis and all of the information, but it will leave you short of recruiting National Signing Day in December. So if you want to join for 2 months for $1, try it out. That's great, but go all in my opinion. That's the best way to get the most out of Blue White Illustrated. You get all of our information, all of our content, all of these things here. The YouTube show, simulcast over on the site. Always make sure it ends up on the site. A lot of our analysis, it starts there and it filters out to the show. So that's the place to go to get all of that stuff. But the place to go to get information on your future, where you're going in your life, is My Perfect Franchise. Andy Ludicky, myperfectfranchise.net. What he does is he takes your expertise, what you know, your skills, and he matches you with a franchise to manage so you can be a business owner. The number one thing I always hear about is like, what's your passive income stream, right? How do you make money that isn't just you earning a wage for your hourly work? That's the way to build wealth, and Andy can help you with that if you've got the skills and the abilities to make that happen. He's not going to just take your money and put you into any franchise or any business. He's going to make sure that you have the best possible chance for success by going through the process with you, is essentially what he does. He holds your hand through the entire process of buying into a franchise, or now he has the opportunity in certain markets to go through buying a small business. And that is, from what I learned, a real roller coaster. So if you're interested in all of those things, 404-973-9901 or Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. Fitz, you were at a concert last night, right? You got to go see a concert, and did you use Gametime? You're muted here.
Of course I use Gametime. That's the only thing that I use for tickets. Yes, the promo code on3 certainly helpful in that situation. I did it, actually set up a new account for my wife and bought the tickets there. So that was the way to go. Yeah, we game the system here. Don't do it on BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, but you can do it everywhere else. We game the system here, and Gametime was very helpful in terms of finding those seats, finding where you're going to go. I got great seats for very cheap. It's actually pretty funny. My wife wanted me to get tickets when they came out. Big Casey Musgraves fan. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to hold off just in case we get a promo from Gametime. Not really, but I bought the tickets last week. They were super cheap, about less than a half of face value, and I was pretty pumped about that. So yes, thank you Gametime for getting us there last night, getting us great seats, and giving us a great show.
Yeah, and it's awesome because, as Fitz just mentioned, the closer you get to the event, instead of going up and getting held at hostage for the tickets, the prices actually go down, and you can see where you're going to be sitting at the event. So it's still way out in the future, but they've got deals available even for Penn State, Ohio State, which is coming up in November. Of course, you can get tickets to the game this weekend. Of course, that's the case. But look, this is what I love, the interactive map where you can see where the tickets are, and then you can click on it and be like, okay, what does it look like when you're sitting in the end zone? And then you pull up and it's like, okay, that is awesome. I want to see something else. You can check out these tickets for $577 if that's what you're into. But you can go around and you can find the best deal available. And that's the thing. Their best deal available, they have an awesome way of getting you that. So make sure you check out. They'll sort by the cheapest price. They'll sort by how many tickets you can get. And as Fitz said, when you use our promo code, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code ON3. That's ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's Gametime. Download the app and use promo code ON3. Download Gametime today. Guys, what time is it? It's game time. Let's get into our review of Penn State practice, Fitz. You and I were there yesterday, and of course, we heard and saw a bunch of different things, so I want to get your perspective on what you saw from the defense and that side of the ball, which I still, at this point, I haven't seen a single second of defensive practice. So what's going on over there?
Oh, just all the fun stuff. You're missing it all. We did get some one-on-ones at the end yesterday, which were pretty entertaining between the offensive and defensive line. For the most part, our viewing windows are short and they are consistent. It's the same basic drills. I will say, Finn at linebacker is still a theme here. Tamir Robinson got hurt in the West Virginia game. We did not see him on Wednesday night at practice. That's an interesting one. Maybe bumps up an Anthony Specca to get some time this weekend. I think one of the subplots this weekend, and you never take an opponent lightly, but you think about Khalil Dinkins, you think about Caden Saunders, you think about Tamir Robinson, these guys, where maybe an extra week gets you to the bye, which gives you an extra week on top of that to get healthy. So I'm very curious how the medical staff is handling things with those guys, because, as we saw last week, Caden was out there. He played, Liam Clifford also, he had 21 snaps last week. So, obviously limited to what the expectations were. So get these guys back on track, get these guys healthy. No severity on the Robinson injury. We saw him in the tunnel after the game on Saturday. He looked okay. There's nothing noticeable that really jumped out, but definitely at linebacker, that's one we continue to watch. I hesitate to say it's going to be a make or break type thing, but because you're only playing two linebackers for the most part, but that gets pretty thin pretty quick. Kobe King and Tony Rojas are your frontline starters. Tyler Elsdon, DeLuca, Robinson was in there. Anthony Speck as well. So it's not the deepest spot on the team. So that's pretty much what we're watching on the defensive side. Some defensive line drills and things like that. Just kind of I don't want to say going through the motions, but going through the same motions that we see every week, which is intense. Don't get me wrong. But it's still a lot of that. Ty Blanding out there with the travel squad. Did not see Xavier Gilliam there as we did last week. Max Granville with the traveling squad, and capped it off by Abdul Carter and Anthony Dunk. I think that's becoming the new Chop versus Olu, in one-on-ones, because that was quite entertaining.
Yeah, and so you can go check out Fitz's notes, or Nate's, I think Nate wrote the notes yesterday for the defense. You both were over there and contributed to the conversation.
Wrote the notes, but he got the name on it. Actually, Greg got the name on it, and then we switched it. Just Greg's very greedy. So, but no, Nate was over there watching as well, and he kind of saw the same things. And yeah, it's just I think for the most part, from top to bottom, that defense, you feel pretty good. But you look a little bit closer on depth, it's certainly going to be worth watching.
The linebackers, my analysis coming out of the last game was I don't know that they played particularly well. And then you got some depth issues there. That is something that I think, I don't know if this game or whenever, they have plenty of time to recover from that. And the defense typically, I want to say, starts slow traditionally from a run defense perspective, where they're not bad, but they're not the best they're going to be. As the season wore on, the last two seasons under Manny Diaz, especially the linebackers got really, really good at their run keys. So I guess, the depth and the linebacker in general, that might be something that's interesting to follow throughout the season. Offensively, things didn't change, but it was a better picture on that side of the ball. Quentin Martin, as you can see here, he was in his number 25. We're tracking what young players might be playing this week. One of the things that I found the most interesting, though, was the tight end room. And, of course, Khalil Dinkins has been missing for a couple of weeks, maybe a month at this point, with, quote, bumps and bruises. James Franklin talked about it afterwards of, he's back, but it doesn't mean that we have to play him. We might not need him. They still want to preserve that red shirt for Luke Reynolds, so that's a part of the conversation with whether or not he plays this week with the bye, and then another non-conference opponent coming up the week after that. So there's some maybe easier decisions to make where you don't have to force anybody to come back early. The depth and the rotation at the tight end, I thought, was revealing. Also, the depth and rotation at receiver, I thought, was revealing, because both Caden Saunders and Liam Clifford were back last week. So all of these guys practicing does not indicate they're going to play in the game, because all these guys, including Jerry Cross, missed last week anyway. But there were some signs on offense that things were more back to normal. So again, check out the site for some of the insight on how those positions worked out, from who's playing where, what the depth chart looked like from where they were going through their lines. And then speaking of the offensive line, Fitz, how interested are you in Chimdi Ono? Because I think there's a chance we're going to see him this weekend based on what we just talked about of guys going through the line, who's wearing their numbers. Is he a guy that intrigues you at that guard position?
I think so. And he has been playing more guard this year, which is he started out, I think, a right tackle, and then they bumped him in to left guard, I believe it was. At least that's the last of my notes. Yeah, very intriguing. You take a look at what he is as a prospect, and I don't think any of us expected him to be ready to go in 2024. But you look beyond that, and he's got a big body, moves fairly well, strong kid, moves fairly well. But there's a long way to go, I think, on the on-field skill set. The challenges of blocking a human in front of you. It's not easy, but he's pretty raw. So I am intrigued by that. I'm intrigued by a lot of the younger guys. Just how do they fit in, and how big is that jump to where they need to be? We talked about this on BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, mainly about the receivers. It's like, what does being consistent mean? And it's not necessarily like, every day you catch the same amount of balls, every day you run the same routes. It's hitting those plays. Excuse me. Sorry about that. It's hitting those plays and then coming back and just not missing them. Like that's the biggest thing with some of those guys is, hey, they're talented football players out here. They can make big catches. They can go up and over the top. You come right back and you drop a pass. Like that is the stuff that's going to weigh on you. That was a big Malik McLean thing. Like he was a really talented dude, really athletic dude, but could you string together 3 catches in a row? That was the big question here. So when you're looking at Tyler Johnson, when you're looking at Anthony Ivey, the guys that we expect to see this weekend a little bit more, that's the thing that comes in. And it's just, I think Penn State fans are so jaded with the receiver room because it was so bad at the end of last year and how bad it is. But, you also don't realize how much better and how much more consistent the guys at the top of the lineup, even if it's not the best performing unit, are than the guys that are 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, and something, just one of the notes that I'll share here on the show that I've noticed over time is applying the coaching that you're getting and having that be consistent as well. Those little techniques, the tips that the coaches are giving you, you can go through the drill 100 times, but if you don't then apply it in other situations, it doesn't really matter. And Amari Evans has looked better and better each week. So I'm noticing, I think you maybe saw him briefly there on the highlights where he ran a super crisp route. And not only that, like watching and trying to observe and learn myself what they're trying to do from a technique perspective, he did the technique correctly, efficiently, and was explosive when he ran through the route. So that's a good sign. Obviously, it's different when there's a defensive back trying to grab you and harass you throughout the route, but it is something that I thought is good to see, that progress and development from a guy who has all the talent in the world from an athletic standpoint. Mech Engineer says here in the chat, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, it's the jugs machine argument from earlier this year with Julian Fleming. It's not that Penn State's receivers weren't using the jugs machine. It's how do you do that in a manner that emulates what you're going to see in the game? And how does that translate into what you can put into the game, put into practice and then put in the game? Like that is the thing that you keep going back to with these guys that are 5, 6, 7, 8 is how do you train yourself when you're not taking game reps, when you're not taking first and second team reps, how do you train yourself to get to that level? And I think that that's the big thing that you keep going back to when you talk consistency with these receivers.
Yeah, Mech Engineer says here in the chat, the other thing, haven't seen Ethan Grunkmeyer in the practice highlights. There's actually, just because they're 2.5 minutes long and I didn't play all of them, he's in there. He's wearing a scout team number, as Fitz said in the chat. He looks good. I do think that there's an opportunity for him to play this weekend because he's a guy that all the conversation around him is he has been impressive. He's been impressive from high school onward, and I'm excited to see if he does get into the game this weekend as well because he looks good. We've talked about it previously. He's also in the highlights there. Jackson Smolik is back and throwing the football. Looks a little ginger, looks a little tender, but the fact that they've got 4 quarterbacks throwing the football in practice, I think is a good sign. Means nothing for the 2024 season, I don't think, but it's good to see all of that going.
Yeah, you think about it, Penn State's got 4 healthy quarterbacks right now. So you need somebody to run the scout team, probably somebody beyond Jack Lambert to run the scout team. Grunkmeyer, I think, is pinballing back and forth. That's why you want to have, as many scholarship guys as possible. I know it's kind of impossible with the transfer portal and everything at that position, but you've got a junior, a redshirt sophomore, a redshirt freshman, and a true freshman. So lines up about as well as you can go. And then, of course, a redshirt freshman in Lambert on top of that.
Mech Engineer donating in the chat. For always appreciate his presence here on the show. Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's get into this, Ryan. The Bowling Green visitor list. This is where you shine here on the show, getting us the information, the names, and who's going to be at the game. So Bowling Green, home opener, How did they do? Where are we going with this list from an overall perspective? Then we can get into some of the names.
Oh, well, it's nice to get back in the show. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you.
Do you want to talk about practice?
I should have went upstairs and made a sandwich. I didn't know we were going to talk about practice so much. Anyway, just teasing. 7 scholarship guys is where we're at right now. I could see that maybe getting up closer to a dozen or so. I think a lot will depend on the weather. It looks right now like it's going to be a little bit better than what the forecast had a day or two ago, but I think a lot of guys will play Friday night and maybe make that decision when they wake up early on Saturday. But right now, I think when you're talking 2026 class, 2 guys that stand out the most to me, guys that I think are definite takes, at least at the moment for Penn State, would be Tavion Branch and Matt Sieg. T-Fac, I don't know who you want to start with. Branch? Okay, Branch it is. I think we've talked about Branch a decent amount here in the summer because he was a consistent camper. Came up to Penn State 3 times this year to camp and really just steadily improved throughout all 3 of those camps and has tested well too. A better athlete than I thought he was when I first watched, at that first camp. And I think taking to the coaching, I think that was a massive thing that led to Penn State ultimately offering him in July. And this was a guy that when they offered, I was like, okay, is this a wait and see guy? Is this somebody who, your junior film's really going to have a big impact? And of course, that's always part of it. I don't want to pretend that won't be. But I do believe right now that if he was somebody who maybe wanted to make a move, I don't think Penn State would hesitate much. And that's easier for them to do, obviously, with the class so early. And, we've seen them take guys pretty early in the past. And then, maybe they don't always end up in the class. But my point is, I don't think Tavion Branch would be one of those guys. I do believe that Trout's really high on him as an interior offensive lineman. And, somebody I'm excited to see a little bit more here in the coming weeks from a film perspective. Matt Sieg, man, we've talked about Matt Sieg a ton over the last year. This was a guy that I think Sean and I, nope, that's Ben Whitford.
Anyway. My bad. No, this is Matt Sieg.
Fat fingers. Okay.
Yeah,
I got you.
This is the right film.
I got you. Well, listen, Matt Sieg's out with a broken thumb, I believe, at the moment. He's going to be out a couple of weeks from what I understand. I think he broke it in that first game, and that really impacts him as a quarterback, and he's going to be a safety at the college level. But, this is a guy that last year came and visited a ton, somebody that we thought, could jump on board with Messiah Mickens kind of early on. He's held off on that, and, he has a very strong offer list now as well, and it's deserved. I mean, he is one of the best athletes in Western PA right now, which, really seeing him up close in that state championship game, which, Steel High beat them pretty good last year in the state championship game, but he was maybe arguably the best athlete on the field. He just only had so much help, to escape Steel High's defense. But I think he's going to be one of Poindexter's top 3, 4, 5 safety prospects in this class. With him being a Western PA guy, I can't see Penn State, grabbing a bunch of other safeties and then leaving Sieg on the side. So we'll see where things progress. He just was at Dove V for the West Virginia Penn State game last week. He will be at Pitt next week, from what I understand, for the backyard brawl. And I'm sure he'll be at Penn State 1 or 2 more titimes, as he has consistently done over the last year or so. But curious to see how his thumb heals up, because, man, he's going to set some crazy records as a quarterback as well. It was funny. He has a broken thumb. He can't pass right now. Still ran for 3 touchdowns and like 80 yards last week. So,
I wondered in those highlights, he did not throw the football. So I was wondering what was up.
Broken thumb. So that's going to hurt him for a couple more weeks. They have a backup that can throw it a little bit. And Fort Cherry's on a obviously playing 1A football. They have a couple athletes that'll get them through the regular season easily. And as long as he gets healed up by the time playoffs roll around, they'll be just fine.
Fitz, I'm going to go back to Tavion Branch. This is a guy that I think, in terms of in the backyard, Penn State's, I don't want to say gotten lucky, but there has been a pretty good crop of offensive linemen in Pennsylvania over the last couple of years. And this one is kind of, I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but a bit of a surprise to the way he developed and kind of the conversation around him. Do you think, I don't want to get to this too early, and this is the dumb question that, sometimes you ask just to ask it. If there was a player to commit this weekend, do you think you would put your money on Tavion Branch or somebody else?
Branch would make sense. Like I said, or like Ryan said, I don't think he's in a hurry to do so. But if you look at all the logical points here, I mean, this kid came to camp 3 times this summer, earned that offer, worked with Troutwine several times. He's coming from a small school in Pennsylvania that's not overexposed or anything like that on the recruiting scene. So, maybe he waits to see what offers he can possibly get. But I mean, that one makes sense as much as any. Maxwell Hiller is coming in the 2027 class, and he's a guy that has those same kind of data points. Like he's always state. He's from he's bigger school at Coatesville in Pennsylvania, but a very pro Penn State area. So I think that Hiller you are just terrible with these today.
I was in a hurry, and that's what happens when you're in a hurry.
Okay, very good. But no, I think those are the two. I don't see Hiller doing anything soon, but like those visits pile up, and I think they mean something. And with no disrespect to the receivers and the D-backs and all these other positions, offensive line often pretty low maintenance. You get some exceptions in here from time to time, but like looking at these guys who are right now regional prospects, it makes a lot of sense. And we've seen those guys be successful at Penn State.
Well, so what do you think of Hiller in terms of coming up this weekend and his kind of outlook? What have you thought of him so far? And I guess I'm all thrown off by my graphics. What do you think, Fitz?
I mean, I think that he is probably, I think it's too early to talk about all this stuff with 2027 prospects, but given the feedback that Ryan and I have gotten, like they're treating him like a Cooper Cousins type guy. Like, I don't know if he's that good, but they're treating him like, oh, this guy can be special. And they had a bunch of 2026s that were pretty good players at camp this summer. And they just keep going back to Maxwell Hiller as a guy that they really, really liked at camp this summer. So I think that makes sense. And he's 6'5", 295 as a sophomore. He's going to have to, shape up and you look at the photos and stuff like that. He's got some work to do on that body composition, but in terms of feet, in terms of skills and stuff like that. And you hate to jump on a big offensive lineman too early in the process. But I think it'd be really good. We got him at 23rd overall, number 2 in Pennsylvania, number 1 interior offensive lineman in the way too early. Don't read into these things. Way too early 2027 rankings on 3.
It is always one of those good things. If you see a guy who needs to reshape his body and his feet still look good, that projects well too at a point where if he does get that under control and Penn State's able to do that if he chooses the Nittany Lions, I guess that's always a positive sign. If you kind of in Donovan Harbor of clearly he's got good feet, but there's things he can work on from that perspective. Ryan, any other guys? Let's go through some other guys here on the list you want to talk about.
For 2027, I think we got to talk about Miles McAfee, really good looking wide receiver prospect that I believe will be a 4-star player. There's a little bit of me that's kind of surprised he wasn't in that top 100 when Charles put that out for the 2027 class a couple of weeks ago. But don't get me wrong, I think he's going to probably be in that 100, 200 range. He's a very good looking player. And so last year at St. John's College High, limited playing time. He makes that transfer this year to Archbishop Spalding, playing alongside Malik Washington, of course, who ended up committed to Maryland. And boy, he's looked really good through the first couple games. 114 yards, 7 receptions, 3 touchdowns. 7 receptions, 3 touchdowns against Archbishop Hoban, by the way, a very good program out of Ohio. That was his first game a couple weeks ago. And then he had another one, I think it was 4 receptions, 53 yards, and a touchdown over to Matha this past weekend. So he's doing it against some really talented teams that have plenty of Division I talent in their defenses. And, we're talking about a sophomore who ended up winning the MVP at the Baltimore Under Armour camp this past year, which I've seen younger players win it at different positions before, usually wide receiver and defensive back. Like those aren't usually 2 of those positions they win it at, just because you got those older guys in there who are just a little more physically developed. They run better. Those kind of things all play into it. So McAfee, I thought winning that, you can only read so much into those kind of events, but it did grab my attention that day, and he did look great. Let me clarify. His route running is very
great
impressive.
receiver. You look at some of those things, some of the double moves. You watch guys who run double moves, and it's all kind of mechanical. He sells them, like just the little things about him playing football so early in his career. I'm very high on him. Fitz, your thoughts on McAfee and his development curve, because obviously very early in his process, but a guy that stands out right away. Do you think that he has the ability to keep growing and getting better to be one of those guys that we're kind of projecting right now?
I think he's a stud. It helps that he's got Malik Washington throwing the ball, but he's really good. And I think he's top 100, top 150 type good. Now, you want to see him continue to grow on that curve of athleticism, like in terms of some of these guys come on early and they're tremendously skilled, and then just kind of everybody catches up. I don't know that Miles will be one of those guys, but I think he's a really good prospect to start. And Penn State's wide receiver recruiting slowly turning that corner, maybe actually quickly turning that corner with Outten, with Jasir Rogers, who is, I think, like really, really good. I can't wait to see. I believe he starts his regular season this weekend. Yeah, so you've got some promise there, and if they do sort of ascend that peak, 2027 makes sense in terms of like if you got a big guy in your backyard, maybe you're a little bit more appealing than Penn State fans will put in their minds right now.
Sean, you going to Rehoboth anymore this year? One of us has to go to Delaware.
They play.
So one of us has to see this game.
I think they open at Cape Henlopen tonight, or maybe that was last weekend. No, that was a scrimmage last.
It was a scrimmage last weekend. Yeah,
I saw that and I was like, maybe this wouldn't be the worst idea. So
they play Salesianum or whatever that school. They play them. I think yes, yeah. Thank you. I still can't pronounce anything. They play them in October though. That's a game I kind of have circled at the moment if I'm going to go down there because they're also like northern Delaware. Like if I'm going to go down there, it's the closest to Harrisburg to get there, right. And obviously it's a quality team. But obviously they have Leighton Von Brandt too. Is his teammate there, so there's a couple guys to keep an eye on. But
well, there you go. Throw Ash and the kids in the car. Just have them sit out there while you go in and cover the game, and then you just go down to Ocean City for the weekend.
She's trying to go to Orlando to see her family, and I'm like, oh, that could be the perfect weekend to make that work. And I'll go to the beach and have some fun. Maybe Greg will come down. He goes to Ocean City with me. But anyway, move on.
Any other guys you want to highlight here on the list?
There's a couple other 26s that have offers. I don't know, whether they're guys that Penn State's going all out for at the moment. Guys that I certainly think junior season film will kind of determine where they're out on the board. Someone like cornerback Damari Clemens, for example, guy out of Buffalo, New York, visited Penn State a ton. He then transfers over to Washington and Massillon, Ohio. Big time program there. So we're going to see, how he develops this year. And I think that'll have a big impact on whether Penn State goes all out for him or kind of prioritizes a few others. I think Ben Whitver's another guy to keep an eye on. Teammates with Matt Henderson at Powhatan in Virginia. Good player. I think, again, junior season film. I think that's really what's going to kind of determine a lot when it comes to where Penn State goes long term. And then Kai Pritchard as well, offensive lineman out of Donovan Catholic, out of Toms River, New Jersey. I didn't realize how high Pritchard is ranked nowadays. I think 24/7 ESPN rivals all have him in the top two, like right outside the top 200, like 208, 207, 205 in that ballpark, which was interesting to me just because Penn State took a while to offer him. He had a ton of offers all throughout the summer, and then Penn State only offered 3-4 weeks ago, which is intriguing to me just because this is a guy that they have data on and someone they've been up a couple of times. So just the fact that they waited long, there's many reasons for that, right? We talk about in-state guys all the time and them sometimes waiting because they want to make sure and double check and triple check things in case the player wants to jump on board really quick. But somebody to keep an eye on, certainly Kai Pritchard. I think he's more of an interior guy, 6'4.5", 280-ish. We'll see where he progresses, but good player ad that we added to the list last night.
And Ryan is going to continue to add to that list as we go throughout today and tomorrow. So check it out, bluewhiteillustrated.com. Another shameless plug. I think you should join for the full year, but if you want to get in for the $1, 2 months for $1, code PSU1. Going to hammer that home for all the people that are joining us because we've been doing awesome. I don't know how many of you are able to watch live at 10 a.m. on a Thursday. I'm so grateful that you're here. So enjoy the show being live and also subscribe to the YouTube channel and to bluewhiteillustrated.com. Let's get into the game itself. Penn State football versus Bowling Green. Our game predictions. And, well, mostly these graphics are correct, so I want to run these particular graphics.
Okay.
So, keys to the game. What interests you about this game other than the conclusion of the game? What interests you?
This is the better of the MAC teams that they're going to play. Like Bowling Green, I think is much better than Kent State, and Bowling Green has a lot of things going for it. Probably more at that level than coming in this weekend. They're very experienced. I believe they got a win at Georgia Tech last year, and they've been like pretty good. Connor Bazelak he went to Indiana. He's a guy that's got experience at the Big Ten level. So they've got pieces. They don't have the 1 to 85 that's going to compete with Penn State, especially up front. But like they've got some pieces there. It's not the worst MAC team that they're going to play in the next 3 weeks. So I think you've got that. They gave Minnesota a game last year in the bowl. Good tight end, good running back. But I mean, Penn State should still win comfortably, but there's, coach that used to coach here always pointed out that, these teams they can give you trouble because they've got some talent. They're a pretty good football team at that level.
One of the things,
Sean.
Joe Paterno used to say that. I was going to do my impression, but I don't want to lose subscribers.
Well, okay.
So I want to, we talked about this yesterday, players, because these non-conference games, you want to look good, you want to improve. There are certain things that you can still improve from a mental and execution perspective if you're Penn State and the starters. But a lot of times this is an opportunity to see some of the young guys late in the game. So that's what we did yesterday, and I want to get your thoughts here. What young players are you interested in watching this weekend on the football field, maybe for the first time, or to get an extended look at them if they played last week? Ryan, anyone that jumps to mind that you wanna talk about here first?
Interesting. Well, we talked about linebacker being, a position that needs depth. So certainly if a guy like Anthony Speck is able to get out there, I'd be curious to see how he performs, but I'll actually go with the offensive line just because Penn State usually they rotate their offensive line. Don't get me wrong, but when you go through snap counts after every game, I mean, the offensive line are always among the highest, right? They're starters as it is. So these are your opportunities to get a Cooper Cousins 20 plus reps. To even Dominic Ruley, by the way, played 10 plus reps last week.
Yep.
Sean, I know that's your boy. You've been pushing him for a while. Guys like Javen Williams, he played 10 reps last week. So there are some guys here who could really use the reps, and this is your opportunity to get them. Obviously, Kent State as well. That'll be another chance to get some of these younger guys, 10 reps or so. Egan Boyer, by the way, another guy we're hearing a lot of good feedback from. This would be an opportunity for him to get some reps too. So to me, it's how those guys handle playing starters at a MAC school. Can they handle their own? Do they make the little mistakes, or are they technically and from a playbook perspective, scheme perspective, are they ready if they had to be thrown into the mix later on? So to me, that's where I'll be focused the most.
Fitz, any other players that you're interested in?
Yeah, definitely. I know Nate wrote about this yesterday, and there's a lot of guys that could make sense. I think maybe we see a little bit more in the Kent State game just based on the opponent. But you look at the offensive lineman. You mentioned Chimney Ono earlier. He's intriguing. Javen Williams needs more reps, and I think that we talk about those guys that are on the 2 deep. Javen Williams, Nolan Rucci. Not as much as young guys as we probably would consider them because they've been in the forefront of our mind through camp and things like that, but they need reps. JB Nelson needs reps. He needs to get where he can get, like that. I think that's a big thing there. Dom Ruley, of course, maybe get Cooper Cousins some center reps and see how that goes. So I think the offensive line is key here. Quentin Martin was wearing his number 25. Oh, sorry. T. Frank's got a light bulb.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, so we're talking a lot about with some of these guys, third quarter, fourth quarter maybe. Are you saying that you can see Javen Williams and Nolan Rucci playing in the first half and kind of rotating series on the offensive line?
Yeah, I don't know that it'll be 1-to-1, but I think it's an opportunity for you to get them when the game is still relatively in doubt. And those are important reps. Garbage time reps are fine because they're still live reps, but at the same time, if you're still putting points on the board with Nick Singleton in the backfield as opposed to Quentin Martin or Tyler Holsworth or something like that. There's a difference there. So I think you get those guys reps. I looked at the weather earlier this week. It seems to be getting better as the week goes on, but it's not going to be a hot, humid day like West Virginia was last weekend. So maybe that's a different reason to get those guys reps, but reps nonetheless. So you look on offense, you got those guys. I mentioned Quentin Martin. T. Frank, I think you highlighted he was in his number 25 at practice. So if this is how they're going to do it with 4 games for him, 4 games for Corey Smith, this is obviously a game that opens that door for a lot of guys, a lot of the freshman guys.
I'm excited to see, and I hope we do get to see him. I think it was Christian here says excited to see Grunk potentially play. I agree. I want to see him be, as Ryan put it, execute the playbook correctly because I think he's capable of that. I saw some good stuff from him in the blue-white game. It was like 2 or 3 throws. I want more information about Ethan Grunkmeyer because there's a lot of things there that I really, really, really like. There's some talent, some natural ability that I'm excited for Penn State football fans to see on a larger scale. And I do hope we actually get to see it, not him come in the fourth quarter and hand the ball off a bunch of times, but also throw some passes and have the opportunity to execute some reading of the defense.
They do run the offense.
Go ahead.
What's that? They do run the offense fairly regularly. I mean, it's going to be more running, obviously, more handoffs, but like if he comes in, he'll throw the ball. Like it's not going to be a situation where he's just in there for the entire fourth quarter and doesn't drop back and throw the ball. They need to get him to see that, especially that's a big reason they scrimmage in Beaver Stadium, is to see those lines, to see those angles. It's so much different than on the practice field. And if you can get those guys reps like that, and it's not only important for Grunk, but Anthony Ivey, Tyler Johnson, maybe Tyseer Denmark, if he gets in the game, like those guys can really benefit from something like that.
Ryan, you're saying?
I'm just trying to pull up last year's snaps from like the Delaware game. I just don't remember them playing third stringers all that much. I mean, especially with the Bo situation, and they want to get him as many reps as they possibly can. Like, to me, I just feel like you're going to see a lot more Bo Prapula going late into that game, and maybe they get Grunk a series or two late, but I just think that's what you're going to see personally.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's not as fun. But like Jackson Smollett got 2 reps last year versus Delaware.
Yeah,
that game was in hand a long time.
Do you think, Fitz, because they are playing him more in the regular part of the offense, that's still the case? Or do you think that it'll be kind of more like it was last year? Because I do think Andy Kotelnicki and his approach to things is probably different than what they had previously. So is there a difference there that might change that approach this year?
I think it depends if they hit some big plays early and extend that lead early. Like, you're not waiting until Penn State has tended to wait till the third quarter to put up some big numbers. And if you can get that going, then you get your series with Bo and the first team offensive line, which I think is very important. He's worked with the first team offensive line, so he gets it. So maybe it's not as paramount as it typically would be, but you need to get him time with that group and then get those guys out of there and then cycle back through. So I think that's the important one, is that series right there, and then go from there and try and get your young guys and try and get your walk-ons in, reward the guys that deserve it. And again, this is probably a better conversation for Kent State, the Grunkmeyer thing, because I think they're going to roll it up on Kent State, and Bowling Green's probably going to be a little bit stickier than the Golden Flashes.
So, any other thoughts before we get into our game predictions? Because that's a great segue into that, Fitz. Ryan, anything else before we get there?
I just think history, like in these moments, like, I'm not saying James likes to run up the score, but he likes to have a good, healthy looking scoreboard. And I think there's been a lot of times in these kind of games where we've thought we could see backups earlier than we do. A lot of times they don't come in until midway through the third quarter or later. And so we'll see. I could see like for example, Quentin Martin and those guys, they make a lot more sense to get in there in the third quarter, especially positions like running back. But like I said, Jackson Smollett played 2 snaps against Delaware. He didn't play at all against UMass. Now UMass was a rainy kind of game. It was a little different. I don't want to put too much stock into that.
They also didn't.
It's a new OC too.
They didn't blast through UMass the way you thought they might have. That game lingered much longer than you thought. The rain
made that rough. Yeah.
And Daquan Hardy taking 2 punts back really cuts into offensive snaps.
Yeah. Good point.
There is the conversation about putting up numbers and the Heisman and Drew Aller, and I don't know if any of that's relevant, but we can talk about that. Maybe. Hey, people ask about it. People have asked about it, and I know Fitz has already responded to some people over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com about this conversation. So it is something that fans are talking about. If you want, listen. KJ Winston was the defensive player of the week for the Big Ten because he had 12 tackles. And that's, people look at stats, and if you start out a game and yes, you had an explosive passing attack, but you only had 212 yards passing in the first game, if that's going to be part of the conversation, he's got to put up 300 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns. Like, there's stat padding that goes into that is totally irrelevant to the quality of play. But when we just box score scout, this game matters for that. Anyway.
One time they really did that was with Saquon, putting him on kick returns and punt returns and trying to really maximize those all-purpose yards. But anyway.
All right, let's get into the game predictions. Ryan, you lead us off, and then I'll follow up at the end.
I don't even know what my score is.
All right, don't worry.
48-10.
The article's out.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah, the article is out right now. You can read all from everybody. But Ryan, 48-10. What do you think?
Bowling Green is a better team than Kent State. Let's definitely start with that. I just think, they ran it up quick on Fordham last week, but they played their starters through the majority of this game. And Fordham still had 400 yards in that game, 185 yards passing. I think you see a heavy run game. You try and get Katron Allen some momentum. Nick Singleton's already feeling good. Get Cam Wallace in there. Get Quentin, Corey, whatever it may be. I just also think you don't have much of a reason to show new concepts, give Big Ten teams a reason to scout you. I think you just build off your momentum from last week, keep that rolling really for these next couple of weeks. Maybe when you get to Illinois, UCLA, you start opening things up a little bit differently. But here we go. Cam Wallace has 23 career. Yeah. I think Cam Wallace will play a ton this upcoming weekend. But to me, it's really build on the run game. Don't show a whole lot because you shouldn't have to. Bowling Green's offense certainly can do some things. I don't think they're going to do a whole lot against a defense as fast and physical as Penn State's. But their defense also gave Fordham plenty of room to make some plays. And I think that's why this will end up being, something that does probably cover the spread. I had 48-10. I think once we get to the fourth quarter, you'll see quite a few backups in.
Fitz, what do you got?
I had 49-10. So Ryan was, I'm prices writing Ryan here.
Okay.
I think that Penn State should be in control. Like I said, it's an older Bowling Green team, so they've got some experience. Maybe that lengthens the game a little bit. You're not facing anything overwhelming in terms of quarterback play, but this guy has been around for a long time. So it's a situation where I think that maybe that strings it a little bit longer than it needs to go. But Penn State's defense is, I think, too fast for this. I think Penn State's defense has the ability to take things away vertically, horizontally, every which way. So I think that's the difference. And then you get some punts, maybe get to work some of that punt return, maybe get to work some of the other stuff. But 49-10 is what I have for Penn State. I didn't even look at the I didn't really look at the spread and over under, but I saw it at one point. It was like 48 was the over under, and we each have Penn State, I think, scoring more than that. So I think that's interesting, and I don't think Bowling Green will score much. I'm terrified to predict a shutout in any game, because you look at Northwestern last year when they fumbled the opening kickoff, and then all of a sudden Northwestern kicks a field goal right away. That's why you stay away from that.
Yeah,
So
48.5 right now, by the way, is the over under. Go ahead.
I have 51-10, and I don't know how I arrived at that. Full disclosure, I haven't watched a single second of Bowling Green yet. That's on my to-do list for today. 51-10 because Penn State and points. But really what I came with away from our our analysis is that we're all in the exact same spot, and I don't know how any of us really got there. But here is a live look.
You love your memes. You love your memes.
I mean, it's better than looking at our faces for another 5 minutes on the show.
Yeah, touche.
Yeah.
Just put it up for the rest of the show then.
Yeah.
Put it up the rest of the show. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that.
Brad Moeller says, do you see them skip fourth down and give live field goal reps? Yes. I mean, that was, ending with 51 points. Like, I do think they're going to try and kick some field goals and get some work there. I don't know when in the game that happens, but I do think that they want to get that done in this, this particular game. 2 kids, 1 wife, all PSU says the article is already out. Come on, what
time. That name gets me every time.
What recruiting flip are you keeping secret to forget your prediction? Is what he's wondering, Ryan.
They just happened. I don't know. I mean, Outten and Goodman, man, they were the 2 to keep an eye on. Sean told me like a week ago to write the Outten story, and then I was busy with something else, and I never did. And then, of course, on Monday, it's Labor Day. I'm helping my dad with something, and they had to scramble. So sorry, guys. Greg, thank you. Sean, thank you. I should have wrote that story when we talked about it a week ago, and I didn't. And yeah, I owe you guys that one. So thank you.
Chad asks this one in the chat. We're going to end here with an impromptu mailbag. We got a couple of minutes, and we want to get to your questions here. And as a thank you for being here and for participating in the show, Chad says, how concerning is linebacker depth going into the next few weeks? We talked about this early in the show, but Fitz, you've been keeping track of this. Are there potential contributors that we should be looking for in this, either in this game or the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I wouldn't mark it as a concern for the next few weeks. Obviously, 2 MAC teams and a bye week, so like you've got time to get yourself together before Illinois is probably going to try and run the ball at you. So you've got the opportunity to get Tamir Robinson healthy. I mean, it's just not a deep group flatly. I don't think there's anybody coming in to save it, save for maybe Abdul Carter playing a little bit of it. But by the way, Abdul Carter, a much better game than I gave him credit for.
Very good game.
You look at what he's done as a pass rusher in one game, and there's a lot to like. And he didn't put up the stats, and he jumped off sides, and I understand that. But like, you look at what you
disagree with his 41.4 PFF grade. Sorry, T-Frank, I had to get that in there. I was shocked to see that.
I was not care for the PFF grades this week. You would have thought Penn State got just destroyed down there.
Yeah.
I think did every member of the West Virginia offensive line have a higher score than every member of the Penn State offensive line? Like,
yeah. Listen, I don't want to get too far into it because I know how the sausage is made, but to me, it sounds like somebody didn't necessarily know what they were looking at, and I think that is.
Yeah, I've been checking them every day to see if they get updated. The
If
defense
you knew
has
how big of
gone
a mission
down.
That was for T. Frank to make that. That was boy.
Yeah,
we all have problems in life. Good job.
And so I do think with Abdul, like the unforced errors, just process and formatically, that is going to push down any PFF grade. But I disagreed, I think, with his run defense grade. He was excellent off the edge. He blew up a couple of plays, didn't make the play. Also, when you cut inside on a zone play, that's not getting reached. That is a technique. That's a decision that you've made. If it doesn't work, we can have that conversation, but there are times where they were slanting inside, and I think somebody thought they were getting reached. And then there are times where you make that decision to cut back inside and try and steal a gap on the offense who is trying to steal a gap on you. Essentially, like, have them run wide, and then you get into the backfield. So, like, there's things on film that, and this is just generally how impressed I was with Abdul, not necessarily talking about the PFF grade anymore. His ability to play the run and the little details with him were much better. Like, his hand usage was much better than I was expecting. So I came away from that game very impressed, and I think much higher on his overall impact at the defensive end position, where I thought at one point this summer, he's going to give you the juice off the edge, and maybe that's what you get from him, kind of Chop Robinson in his first year at the end. I think he can be a complete player at the position. He's 260. He's all the things you want. This one here from Paul Dog. He says, where's Alex Birkmeyer? Sorry if the answer is common knowledge. It is something we've talked about here on the show. We haven't talked about him in a while. Fitz, I usually throw this one to you. Do you want to answer it? Do you want me to answer it? How do you want to go with this one?
Yeah, he's third teamer right now. He's just not been what they hoped he was when he got on campus, and he's still working his way through there. Picked up a penalty last week on the 2-point conversion that would have negated had they completed that pass with the lineman downfield. Showed some aggression on that play, but that was pretty much all we saw of him. So you're looking at third team right now. Probably should see him this weekend. It was a really interesting case study. I mean, I was extremely high on him coming out of high school. I know a lot of people were extremely high on him coming out of high school. It just hasn't happened. That's why offensive line recruiting so hard. Yeah. Yeah. And I think just looking at that particular class and the way that Chimdi Ono has kind of developed here late, I'm not saying he's going to be a factor this year, but the fact that he is ahead of Alex Birchmeyer on kind of the progression chart, and you've got Anthony Donko, who is way ahead of everybody else. It just shows you we have an idea of what traits and talents are available, but you don't know how these guys are going to implement those things. We just don't know anything.
Yeah, we just don't know anything. I know you're going there.
I don't. Well, I absolutely don't want to say that.
We're ending the show with a bang, boys.
Well, that's the thing. It's like when people say, like, oh, you ask a question on the show and they're like, that's a stupid question. Next topic. And I'm like, all right, then let's just not have a show. Like, let's not have a discussion about things. Anyway, let's end the show. Fitz, get us out of here on what to watch for the next couple of days. Yeah, we got Bowling Green coverage coming up, more recruiting stuff. I put up something yesterday on the site about Penn State, where they're going in 2025. Someone asked about the numbers earlier in the chat, and it's an open-ended question, because you're looking at expanding the rosters, you're looking at expanding the scholarships, you're looking at expanding just basically everything. So it kind of, at 25 commits, typically in a season, in a cycle, you're done by now, or pretty much done by now. But I put out 4 guys they're looking to flip, and there's even more guys that they're looking at just on a widespread basis. Somebody asked about Ty Jackson in the chat. Like, he's still planning on coming up for the whiteout game. So like, it's like the board is still bigger than you would think with 25 guys on the commit list right now. So I think that's a very interesting thing. 2025 will be more exciting than 2024 coming down the stretch by far. And that's good for us, not good for our sleep schedule, not good for Ryan and his stress levels, but it is good for BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. And again, you can always subscribe over there. Sign up for a year, sign up for $1. I don't care. Just sign up and join us over there. We can continue this conversation then. I'm Thomas Ryan Carr, Ryan Snyder, Sean Fitz. Excellent job today, gentlemen. We will be back with the Penn State football tailgate show live from outside the Bryce Jordan Center ticket office, 9 a.m. So when you're having your beer and your eggs, come over and say hi. And we'll have a good conversation in between the breaks. Myself and former Penn State offensive lineman and from the Behind the Wall podcast, Landon Tangwell, are going to be taking you through what to expect kind of this conversation about Penn State Bowling Green, Penn State players we're interested in. We're going to get his thoughts on the game as well. That's just one of the things we got coming up game day. Check out the article on the site for more. We'll be back and talk to you then.